What is up, math superstars? In this edition of Mr. Peterson Presents, we're going to bring to you some strategies how to divide fractions. So in this video, you're going to be given two different strategies to try when dividing fractions, and you can use whichever one that you like the best. Now let's go over some strategies about dividing fractions. And so here we're going to talk about two different ways you can do this. Our first strategy, just like how we add and subtract fractions, we always look for common denominators. So in this, we're going to find common denominators of both fractions. Then we're going to divide the numerators, and we're going to simplify. So here's the way that this looks. We need to find common denominators. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and write out my multiples of 4. So I got 4, 8, 12, and 16. And then my multiples of 3, I have 3, 6, 9, and 12. And the number that these two share in common is 12 is my least common denominator. So let's go ahead and rewrite these fractions now with a denominator of 12. So both fractions are going to be out of 12. And so what I'm going to do is 4 times 3 gives me 12. So 3 times 3 is going to give me 9. And let's do the same thing for the other side. So 3 times 4 gives me 12. So 2 times 4 is going to give me 8. And so the way we're going to go ahead and divide our numerators now, so we have a same denominator. What we can do is we can divide the numerators. And so what we can do is we can take 9. Our first numerator is going to go on the top. And our second denominator, or second numerator, sorry, is going to go at the bottom. So I have 9/8. And then we're going to rewrite that as a mixed number. So 8 goes into 9 one time. We're going to keep 8 as a denominator. And the remainder is 1. And so when I did the strategy for common denominators, I'm left with 1 and 1/8. So now let's talk about the strategy with finding the reciprocals. And so all we're with a reciprocal is we take the fraction and then we actually just flip it. And so when we talk about reciprocals, so say the reciprocal of 2/3, what we do is we flop the numbers. So when we do that, I can say that the reciprocal of 2/3 is 3/2. So in doing this so we talk about reciprocal, what we're going to do is we're actually going to change the division sign to multiplication sign. And then we're going to find the reciprocal of the second fraction. First fraction we don't touch, we find the reciprocal of the second fraction. Then we multiply and simplify. So let's do it. Here's the way that this works here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the reciprocal of the second fraction here. So 3/4 stays the same. This division sign changes to multiplication. And then the reciprocal of 2/3 is 3/2. And so now we're just going to go and multiply our fractions. So I'm going to multiply our numerators. So 3 times 3 is 9. Multiply the denominators. 4 times 2 is 8. And when I go and simplify that, I'm left with 1 and 1/8. And so we have two different strategies. First strategy is finding common denominators. Second strategy is using the reciprocal. And so at any time you can use either strategy. It is up to your preference. So now what happens if we have any kind of mixed numbers or whole numbers? So in strategy number 1, we're going to change all the numbers to improper fractions. And then we're going to find common denominators, divide out our numerators, and then simplify. So let's get the. So now let's go ahead and use the steps for finding common denominators. The very first step here is that we're going to change our mixed numbers to improper fractions. So I have 4 times 1 gives me 4, plus 3 gives me 7. So I have 7/4 divided by 5/6. And let's go ahead and find out what our denominator is going to be. So we're going to write out the multiples of 4. So I have 4, 8, 12, and 16. Multiples of 6, I have 6, 12, 18, and then 24. And then you guessed it, they share 12 in common. So I'm going to go and rewrite these fractions with a denominator of 12 now. So let's go ahead and rewrite both of these fractions with a denominator of 12. So for 7/4, I know that 4 times 3 gives me 12. So I can do 7 times 3 gives me 21. And then 6 times 2 gives me 12. So multiply times 2 gives me 10. And since I have common denominators here, you guessed it, so my first numerator is going to be the top number. Second number is going to be in the denominator. And let's go ahead and now simplify. So 10 goes into 21 2 times. 10 is going to be my denominator. Because denominators stay the same. And I'm left with 1 in the numerator. And so finding common denominators, I have a fraction of 2 1/10. So now let's use the strategy of finding the reciprocal. So I need to make all the numbers into improper fractions. I'm going to change the division sign to multiplication sign. I'm going to find the reciprocal of just a second fraction. Multiply and simplify. So let's take a look at how this is going to work. So you guessed this, we have 7/4, just like in our last example, divided by 5, 6. So the rules in using the reciprocal, so the division sign turns into a multiplication sign. First fraction stays the same. And the second fraction, I'm going to flip-flop the numbers. So now I'm going to have 6 in my numerator and 5 in the denominator. And now I'm just going to multiply. Looks like I'm multiplying two fractions. So I'm going to 7 times 6 is equal to 42. 4 times 5 is going to give me 20. And then what I can go ahead and do is I can go ahead now, before I change it into the mixed number, I'm going to divide the top and bottom by 2. This is going to make finding that mixed number just a little easier here. So this simplifies to 21/10. 10 goes into 21 2 times. 10's my denominator and 1 is in the numerator. And so here we have several steps. We have 2 different strategies here. You can use whichever strategy is the best, and you want to make sure that you do each problem one step at a time to get the right answer. And so if you get anywhere, say if you get up to the improper fraction and you can't get to the mixed number, you're so close to getting this done, which means that you did lots of steps right. So just try to figure out that last step of changing the improper fraction to a mixed number and you'll be in great shape.